Yo, what's going on, everybody? Welcome. This year, I will be hosting the 2023 SWC Note.txt. So glad to have you on the show, and I look forward to going over the recaps of these matches, talking about my favorite analytic moments, as well as the key pivotal things that really define each of these players individually. So, for those of you who don't know me, those of you who do know me, my name is Once in Love, also known as Tyler. It's nice to meet you guys. Nice to see you guys again. It's been quite a while since we've had a chance to work on some SWC stuff, but glad to be here. So going over these matches, we had 3 days of prelims for the Americas region. Day 1, we had 2 winners. Day 2, we had 2 winners. And day 3, the losers bracket, we had 4 people come out. So in total, we have 8 people moving on to America's Cup, which will be on September 16th. So, the recap on day 1, we had Raigeki versus Lonely. Lonely being a newcomer, Raigeki being the America's Cup champion of last year, 2022. We then had Falling Flower versus Thompson, a very powerhouse matchup, 2 of the strongest boxes we have in the North America region. And then it was Firas and Bida. Firas, a very good friend of mine, longtime player, well-known streamer, very funny guy, versus Bida, someone that we don't actually know super well in the scene, but played quite well overall in the matches. Last match of the day, Big V versus True Whale. This had to be the money match. This is the one everyone was looking forward to seeing. Big V, one of the fastest boxes out there. Crazy strong. And then we have True Whale. Second place, America's Cup, coming for his victory this time. So the way this day ended up was Big V and Falling Flower at the top 2, moving on to America's Cup. And, you know, there were a lot of things in this that were a little bit disappointing and some things that were absolutely amazing to see. Great excitement overall, but we'll get into that a little bit later. So day 2, we had 4 players that some of you may know and some of you may not know. A lot of them are pretty prominent in the community overall, but again, if they're not big names that you've seen on the SWC screen, you might not know them. So we had Reese, Zex, Crocodile, and Vic. All people that are fairly well known overall, but very, very, very good players that showed really good matches this time. So in the first matchup, we had Reese versus Dreams Joseph. Then we had Zex versus Madreamd, Zepha versus Crocodile, and Vic versus Spires. Now, day 2 ended with Spires and Madreamd being on top, 2 people that made it to SWC America's Cup last year. So most people's predictions were probably pretty good in that situation. So day 3 was a little more complicated. Anybody who lost in the first round of day 1 or day 2 will be playing against each other. And if they win, they move on to the semifinals. Now in the semifinals of the losers bracket, it's a best of 5 instead of a best of 3. And you'll be playing the people who lost essentially the finals in day 1 and day 2. So our first matchup, we had Lonely versus Vic, who will be playing Dreams Joseph. We had Firas versus Zex, who would be playing Zepha. We had Thompson versus Reese, who would be playing against Bida, and True Whale versus Crocodile, who would be playing against Raigeki. Now, the interesting things here to note, Raigeki being last year's tournament winner for America's Cup, and True Whale being last year's second place, both in the losers bracket, was a bit of a shock for a lot of people with their predictions. These are very, very strong players, but overall, we ended up with Iris, Zepha, Dreams Joseph, and True Whale as the victors of day 3. The really big note here was that True Whale had to play against Raigeki for his qualification slot in the America's Cup. The rematch of a century, first place and second place of last year playing against each other, was very exciting. And honestly, I was on the edge of my seat the whole time watching. It was crazy. So of these 8 players, I'm really, really excited because, well, to be frank, it is America's Cup of last year without Raigeki, but with Reese. Now, something that I think is really interesting about that is because these players know each other so well, they've played against each other on ladder, they've played against each other in tournaments, in SWC, online, everywhere. They're going to be so much better prepared to fight each other. They're going to know all the little tips and tricks they have. These players are going to have to create more strategies that they've never pulled out of their hats before. Things you might have never even seen in Summoners War before. We've seen Zepha with the crazy unique drafts, using all of those different Assassin's Creed units as well as the non-Assassin's Creed versions. We've seen some crazy things that people just would never expect. You'd never expect someone to pull out, a water Cassandra or anything like that. And they do it. They make it work at the highest level. And that, I think, is why this year's America's Cup is going to be the best we've ever seen. So with this year's prelims being finished, there are a couple things that I want to go over that I thought were incredibly important and pivotal through the entire tournament. Now, the first thing I want to talk about is drafting. So people always talk about RNG. What does it matter what your draft is? Blah, blah, blah. Who cares? It's just RNG. There's a huge factor of taking into account what happens if this unit violent procs first turn, this unit violent procs first turn. That's where a lot of the drafts really make the biggest difference. If you're not GGing someone on turn 1, or you're not GGing someone in draft, you need to be able to figure out how to take your next steps according to first procs, first resistance, right? There's a lot of matches where people use Cigar, or they're using Sekhmet, or they're using Oliver, and if they don't hit the reset on the first turn, it's over, right? Those are big risk, big returns. But sometimes that's the strategy that you have to take. So one of the games that I want to talk about that I think was perfectly clinically drafted was Madrimdi versus Zex game 1. So in Madrimdi versus Zex game 1, we saw a speed lead come out. So on Madrimdi's side, we saw a speed lead come out early on. We saw an anti-cleanse, which was the Hey Gang, plus the attack bar gain to kind of fix or adjust the AoE strip setup that he was going for. And then once the Shizuka and Juno came in, we saw the Domin. Domin was the GG lockdown in that situation because Curse of Death, Domin skill 3, is uncleansable unless you manage to kill the Domin. And it also denies you from reviving. Now that is like the perfect 3-point setup, like the trifecta, to deny Zex's favorite combo, right? Shizuka Juno is an incredibly good combo because it rotates, it protects, it's good against CC. But the problem is Domin entirely denies that by removing the fact that Juno can just freely cleanse and heal herself every single turn, right? On Zex's side, we see a lack of the defense break. There's not that much fast threat to go along with his control setup. So he ends up just falling behind too hard in the draft. And that's a perfect example of not needing RNG to beat someone. Now, the best series overall, I felt as a spectator, was definitely Zephyr versus Crocodile. We saw a lot of unique drafts from both sides, lots of different gameplay styles. We saw control, we saw AoE cleave, we saw single target snipe, we saw weird units like light Ezio and water Ezio, things we never see anywhere, right? Things that are very, very rare. Did they work? Sometimes yes, sometimes no, but I think these games, these kinds of matches are what makes Summoners War really exciting, right? We see things we never would have seen before, right? Or what about the Miying, right? There was a Miying game where Zephyr came back and he basically won before the whole chat was losing their mind. Everyone's like, oh my God, Miying, Miying. People are shouting and exclamation marks and people are throwing their hands up, people are throwing their phones. It's moments like these where you see these unique, very, very niche units come out that win for you. Those are the exciting parts of Summoners War for me. And overall, honestly, we have to do it, right? It's an analyst perspective, but I think the best 5 units that I saw, and you may disagree with me, so please, if you do disagree, let me know in the comments. I'd love to see what you guys think about happened in the tournament. I think the best 5 units in no particular order in America's Cup Prelims 2023 was Rakuni, the 3-star Fireheart, Domin, the 5-star Darkom Yoji, Miles, the 5-star Water Sky Surfer, Laura. I know Laura, a little bit controversial if people think Laura was good enough or not, but I felt like with the additional damage, she was really top tier. Laura being the 5-star Light Okul Girl, and finally Praha, the 5-star Water Oracle. These units felt like the most pivotal based on their win rate, their composition picks, as well as their flexibility overall in the entire draft. So thank you guys so much for being here for episode 1 of Note.txt. I am, again, Once in Love or Tyler, as well as America's Cup will be on September 16th. You should check out the bottom corner. I think it's right there if you want to grab the QR code to sign up. I'll be there. A lot of the players will be there. We'll be doing lots of giveaways. So you have the chance to meet me, a bunch of other content creators, as well as all of the players. So hopefully you guys will be available for America's Cup SWC 2023 in LA. Looking forward to episode 2, guys. We'll see you soon, right after America's Cup.